Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Catryn Becker. In this podcast, we love to talk to all sorts of different successful people from all different industries and walks of life because we want to learn what they have learned in their career to make them successful. Because we believe that while a smart person learns from their mistakes, a genius learns from the mistakes of others. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to an incredible business and lifestyle coaching duo, even though we only have the one here representing today. Her name is Allie Sellers, and she works with her husband, Eddie, at the Health Academy Incorporated with their incredible signature program of the Wealthy Entrepreneur. And that's wealthy as in WELL. So we're going to talk about all sorts of great things about how to have a very holistic approach to what you do and what they've learned on their journey to make that transition from being a business owner that creates a job for themselves to truly having the time freedom that Allie and her husband Eddie desired. So Allie Sellers, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be here. And I just have to say, I love that little phrase about the genius learn from the mistakes of others. Like it's so good. And that's enough to tune in continually every single day.
Well, I hope so. I hope so because you don't know what you don't know.
No.
And
And
so
that's just it.
I love being able to bring that to people from all of their different experiences and all the different angles and flavors that we all bring together.
Yeah. And that's just it, right? I mean, that's why we are social beings. We're social people. And the more we can lean in and not just like watch to copy, but watch to learn, right? Watch to learn and take those little tidbits of information and really develop what that means for you.
Absolutely. I had a guest on recently, and she talked about in the beginning when she didn't know anything about business that she flat out did copy the people that were doing it until
Yeah.
she built those muscles and was like, okay, now I understand how to adapt this for who she was and who she is,
Yes.
she's becoming, and to really take that to the next level.
Yeah. I love that. Powerful transition.
Absolutely. So speaking of powerful transitions,
Hmm.
you've had some in your life, but I want to talk about something that's happened more recently to you. And that was you and your husband, Eddie, were on the Amazing Race Canada as contestants there. I mean, first of all, that's super cool because that show, such a fun, uplifting show. And it's really some of the great reality TV that's out there. Tell us a little bit more about what that experience was like for you.
Absolutely. And you know what? It is a fun show and it is an uplifting show. And what I really love about it is, yeah, everyone's in there to win, but it's about winning by the best version of you, not by the bringing somebody else down or cutthroat. Like it is just such an amazing show. And the experience itself was it was actually a life changing moment in the recognition of the roles both Eddie and I play in our relationship and in our business. um, I will expand on that just to share. When you do life together, you divide roles, right? Whatever those roles look like for a family, for a couple. One of you is better in certain areas, the other is, stronger in other areas. And for us, at least, we stayed in our lane. We have been staying in our lanes. In our business, we do business together, raising children together, and we both have our lane. What was brought to our attention during the show is if our lanes get crossed, we're a hot mess. Like, we're like, oh my gosh, because we are very strong, united. And that's not to say we're not strong as individuals. We are. That's why we come together well. But we've mastered our lanes and put so much trust on the other that when that got mixed up, we were both very individually challenged.
Mm. Well, and that's such a good point when you think of anybody in a business partnership capacity.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not in a partnership, you're still working with other people. And
Yes.
you can think like there's really two schools of thought of do you work on developing your strengths and making your strengths stronger, or and then finding people to compensate for your weaknesses, or do you focus on eliminating some of your weaknesses? And it sounds like
Mm-hmm.
you guys had such good lanes of really focusing on your strengths that there wasn't necessarily the cross training. But I guess that's also part of your intrinsic who you are as people, right?
Yeah. And that's again, it was just this moment of like, okay, where did it get messy here? Because in that race, it's going to get messy. Where did it get messy here? And it got messy the moment he was trying to do something that we knew was my strength, and we went in with a plan, and then again, vice versa. So when you're looking at, building a business, and we're unique in the sense that we do life together, but we also do business together. So there is a uniqueness in that, where we don't necessarily strengthen certain things that we're good at in business when we go home.
Sure.
Right. For example, because there's just such crossover, but then also recognizing, where our strengths are also what has allowed us to be successful, to work so well together. So it wasn't necessarily a bad thing where I say it was like this, like, oh my goodness, but it was an awareness that's actually allowing us to step back and look at where we can bring the other in, because there's still a strength in being able to not necessarily be the best at the other skills, but have more knowledge and awareness over some of those other skills.
Well, and I love that you're talking about, you do business together, you do life together. Because on a show like The Amazing Race, you are taken out of both of those things for weeks.
Yes.
How does that work?
Yeah. So when they, a lot of times we don't know what happens on the backside, right? Like what actually goes on. And you are taken out of your life. You are taken, your phones are taken away. Your ability to even call your children is taken away.
Gosh. And you have
fun. Yes.
That must have been an interesting time.
Well, it's funny because my husband was like, freedom, like loving every minute. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? Oh no, oh my gosh. So it removes you from the habitual behaviors that you have created, right? So it removes us not just from, our ability to access our friends and family and the things we take for granted. It removes us from social media. It removes us from TV. It removes us from the outside world, which can be challenging, absolutely. But in the same breath, you are forced with really looking in and even entertaining yourself, right? Having, you've got time, you've got quiet, you don't have access to the things you normally do to fill voids. We are, human beings fill voids, whether we fill voids with perceived bad habits or, perceived good habits, we are still using them instead of really addressing self and that personal growth aspect. So we were forced into communicating with one another on a whole other level, where, yes, when you're on the race, there's a level of communication, but when you're locked in a room, literally with no access to things, like your level of how you communicate and with one another, but then also be comfortable with self is challenging. You need to be comfortable or find a way to be comfortable with self, or you might go a little loopy. Yeah.
I love talking about it in that way of how we fill things, that people talk about scrolling, Instagram and TikTok and all these things, and you don't even realize how much time gets just vanished. And then if you ask people, like I put, as we started 2024, I'd put a post up about what do you want more of? And so many people said they wanted more time, which obviously is not something that we can just manufacture, but by choices we make in our life can find these pockets. So it's quite a gift that you were given that time of self-reflection and for you and Eddie, because I can't imagine being, co-parents to 5 kids, running your own business, that you had that level of time together.
Yes. And, we can say all of us have it or none of us have it and we create it. In the same breath, Eddie and I have made decisions in our life, and definitely not always, but over the last, number of years, almost 10, we've really made decisions in our life with the recognition of how valuable time is. And so we've made changes. We've really looked at and asked the real questions of what is valuable to us and how we want to structure not just our business, but how we live and how we interact. We've made decisions around that and had conversations around that. But I will still say, when it was a real eye-opener of where we are still getting distracted, where we actually still have time, but we're taking it from ourselves. And again, I mean, the best reference was social media. It's a foundation of many people's business and their marketing strategy, but how much is marketing and how much is dead space?
Sure, absolutely. So were you guys big fans of the show ahead of time, or was it just kind of a wild hair that you're like, we should apply, this would be fun?
You know what? My husband is one of those, he's like, everything is exciting in life kind of guy. And I'm like the more serious, sometimes a little bit more serious. And I joke because we always have mentors and invest in that type of leadership for our own development. And I remember our mentor saying one time, yeah, and he didn't mean it in a negative way, but he's like, Eddie's the light and you're the dark. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, oh, she's like, no. But with The Amazing Race, Eddie had said for years, but he says lots of stuff like, oh, we're going to do that. We're going to be on the race. We're going to do. And he does. He always just has that energy of like, take it all on and let's go. And I'm like, well, So he tagged me in a Facebook post and he said, Allie and I are applying for the Amazing Race Canada. We're so excited. Videos in, And I'm like,
what?
We are? And what do you mean videos in? And I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay, it's just one of his things. But that's it. You got to plant seeds and you got to then water those seeds to bring them to life. Because he came home and I was just laughing because our Facebook went off of people like, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. And And he owned it. Like, we're already on the show. He's like, yeah, I know, it's going to be so great. We're on the show. And I'm like, we don't even have a video. Like, Ed, what are you doing? But again, it shows though, you got to bring that kind of excitement into something that doesn't exist yet for it too. Right. Yeah. And he did. So it was him tagging me in a Facebook post. Then of course, now he's the light on the dark. So he brought all the excitement, but then I'm like, oh, okay. So now you've said we're going to do this. So sit down. We got to do this video. This is what we're going to talk about. Because now the darkness comes in.
I think of it sounds more like the implementer.
Thank you.
The implementer.
Yes. So the visionary and the implementer. How about we change the language?
Yeah, I mean, important. So let's make this powerful and supportive to you.
Thank you. And you know what? I've laughed about it over the years, but that's right.
Well, I think that's such a beautiful thing because it is so true that sometimes we get so caught up in the how that we lose sight of what we want because we're like, but I don't know how. Well, you figure it out. If you have that vision strong enough, whatever it is figure outable.
And oh my gosh, so important to even repeat that message because that's just it. We get so caught up in like, don't know how, instead of no. What do you want? Because the how is the easiest part. You know why? Someone else has already done it.
Sure.
Right? Someone else already done it. And maybe not exactly, but enough to get you started.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you deal with this with your clients, but if I ask my clients what they want, 9 out of 10, and probably mostly 10 out of 10, cannot answer that question. They do not have a clear vision. If they do have something, it's very kind of ethereal. There's no actual meat to the bones.
Yeah. So, no, isn't that sad? Isn't it like, I think that's very sad, but it's true. And I would say also with my clientele, it's 10 out of 10. Even the ones that come and know their goals, you said they're so like loose and fluffy and just nothing to like, what even that does that mean? Like, and so even in the work I do in person or in, other courses that I offer, it's goal setting is the first thing. And it's such a like, oh, SMART goals, oh, this, oh, that. No, just like just know what you want and why it's important to you. Like, hold on to it because I believe we know, we're just so scared to own it.
Yes.
because we think it's unachievable. So we're not actually owning something. And I'm like, give me your big, huge goals. Like, just like, let's own it. Don't worry about the how right now. Just pretend whatever it was you asked for, it could hand you the exact, like ABCD, this is how it gets done. Pretend that. Now what do you want?
Yes,
Right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
I think I would love if we can also just like shift the conversation when we do talk about those big dreams, because like you said, a lot of people are scared about it. So they don't even tell other people. And I
Yes.
know in my life, when I have said some of those big, scary things out loud, the first thing people ask is, well, how? How are you going to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go, well, I don't know. So
Insecure.
I won't do it. Right. And you have
Yeah.
that action happening. But
Yeah.
change it to being like, oh, why? Why do you want that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I know. And if we could start to change the language again, and even if someone asks us that, because it's not about changing the world, change self, right? If someone asks that, it's like, you know what? I'd rather tell you why.
That's exactly
I'd
right.
rather tell you.
We have that power. So
Yeah.
if someone tells you how on a big dream, you don't know how, tell them the
Yeah.
why.
Oh my gosh, how are you going to do that? You know what? I'd rather tell you why.
Ah,
Like, it's just knowing the language, right? Now we're empowered. Now,
yes,
and
like sitting up taller, like
yes. And as soon as you say why it's so important to you, guess what that person's going to do? Oh my gosh, that would be so amazing in my life too. Way to go. Like, that's awesome.
yeah.
And now all of a sudden, again, the power's back, because it's insecurity that keeps us from our greatest potential. And the insecurity is not even ours. It's
No,
something we've adopted by somebody else's language. I mean, we can talk about upbringing, we can talk about all those things. Okay, fine, but it's all real, but it's still then a decision to shift that.
hmm,
It's like, because at the end of the day, the people who are speaking something like that over to you, like how, or oh, that's ridiculous, or it's impossible. That's not for you. It was impossible for them.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
they can only speak from their perspective. So you can say, well, that was the case for you, but for me, this is why I'm doing it. And it's like just shifting the conversation.
Oh, 100%. You and I are speaking the same language, sister.
There we go. Yes. And again, it's just like one shift at a time. If that's what someone takes from, again, our conversation today, man, what a powerful shift in language.
Yeah. Yeah, that can mean the world. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little. I mean, now I hope everyone's like curious, like, ooh, she's saying some really juicy stuff. Like, what you? What is the stuff? So please give us the all of the details on the wealthy entrepreneur.
Yeah. So the wealthy entrepreneur is, like you referenced, spelled WELL. And, it's such a heart led personal program for me. And it's because I did not live a wealthy entrepreneurial life. When I started my career, I was in the health industry, and I laugh at it, but I was so unhealthy in the health industry because of how I structured my business. My business was structured in, I will say with honesty, an industry standard, but the industry standard was not a healthy standard.
Mm.
It was selling my time for money. It was back to back clients. And whether we look at that again and how I wanted to live, or even from my client's perspective, maybe I did a good job faking it with like client number 6, 7, and 8 of the day, but there's no way they had the best version of me.
Right.
There's just no way. It's impossible. So really looking at how we structure, and just because it's always been done a certain way, or you perceive it's always been done a certain way, doesn't mean it's the only way. So we want to look at business structures. We want to look at how we are offering our services or our programs. And the wealthy entrepreneur does just that. It's like, first off, let's understand, back to goals. How do you want to be living? What in, your perfect scenario, not what you think you can accomplish right now. Just, again, how you have a magic wand in your hand. What does that look like? And the funny thing is, when I say that, people aren't really exaggerating. Like, they're not. They want, it comes back to the core things. They want time, right?
Hmm.
People want time to enjoy the fruits of their labor, to enjoy family, to enjoy experiences. They want to be able to see the world. They want to be able to have experiences, right? And see the world. For some people, it's literally the world. Some people, it's like their neighborhood, their town. It's being involved in community. It's, really embracing again why they're in a certain field in the first place. So we always look at it again as of what do you really want to be experiencing? And like I said, it always goes back to time, but we divide it up. We look at it as health, wealth, and relationships. And we should experience a certain financial success. We should. We all deserve to feel abundant in how we are living. And that abundance looks different for each of us. But what does that look like in, again, what you as a unique individual, what does that look like for you? It will grow, it will expand, but really being real about that. And then relationships, because relationships are with clients, they're with our kids. For me, the biggest transition in my life came from missing time with my kids. It was like a slap in the face of like, what are you doing? Like, you're using your reason for work, you're using them as your reason to work so hard, right? That they need stuff and they need you. Because I had it divided in my mind that I couldn't have time and money. It was one or the other. That was a belief I had. I had that it had to be done a certain way. So the wealthy entrepreneur, again, it helps you really get clear on what you want. It helps you then restructure how you work. If you're a coach, consultant, or expert service provider, it's like, how do we structure your business based on results, not time? And when we can structure a business based on results, all of a sudden time opens up. You can give all the time in the world, but people don't need it because they're structured in results.
I love that you say that, because there is it's a slight distinction, but I think it's an important distinction between the word goals and the word results, because a goal implies, like, let's just put it in terms of running a race. When you start, the goal is to finish, right? But the result of finishing is looking the other way back, right? It's assuming that it's been done. And it kind of goes back to, Eddie being like, we've already made the video. And you being like, what? When did we record? Right? He had the results in mind. The result is you on the show. It wasn't a goal. And I think
exactly.
It's critical. It's crucial.
It really, really is. And it's so important. And again, that's really what we want to look at. We want to look at what are the results you help somebody achieve, and getting specific on that. Because with coaches, there's a lot of crossover expertise. And that's amazing. That makes you powerful on the back end. But on the front end, you want to get really specific on the big problem you solve. Then you get to use your skills to help them solve that problem. But when you're trying to be everything to everybody, you become like nothing to anyone, to no one.
Yes.
So it's yeah. And so we want to structure one results-based program to start with, right? And that one program, it's like it gets to honor both coach and client. And that's so important, because when both coach and client are honored, the only thing in mind is results. That's it. So with that, again, we're able to increase income, which again, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not selling my like hourly sessions. How is that ever possible? People will invest in a result. And, I'm going a little bit off topic here for a second, but I think it's an important statement. When you sell time, people need to decide if you're worth it. When you sell a result, people need to decide if they are worth it.
Ooh, print that on a bumper sticker, and
right?
So good. When you hear something so good, it's because it rings true.
Yeah. And that's just it. So that's where, again, the wealthy entrepreneur, it supports, all of those expert service providers, and it supports them to take their expertise and actually offer it in a result, which again, frees up time for them, frees up location should they choose to be able to travel. It's interesting. A lot of clients I've worked with over the years are so tied to a location. They're like, well, I want more time, but like, I'm never going to leave my location. Like, cause it's just like such a fear mentality that it's just impossible the other way. And, again, keep it, do it, like, great, whatever. But they're like, oh my gosh, I'm in this country and I'm like, yeah, awesome. Amazing. Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Something you said earlier has been rattling around in the back of my brain, and I kind of want to touch on it, because I know other people because I've been in the health space for many years as well, and I've seen leaders completely burn themselves out trying to do it again, just like you mentioned, the industry standard. And I think there's a difference between having, I feel like a lot in the health space and wellness space, many women are drawn to serving in that capacity, but
Hmm.
most of the processes and standards that have been created from a man's perspective, in a very
Yeah.
masculine way of doing business rather than
Hmm.
women just sometimes do it differently. And so my question is, A, if that's something that you've seen as being true, and how having Eddie as your partner has maybe balanced that out, even though it sounds like, as you being the implementer, which is kind of a more masculine, get stuff done,
Hmm.
playing around with how all that balances out for your
Yeah.
situation.
Such a great question. And I think there's, a few thoughts, maybe not answers, but thoughts I've had in that. And first, I think what really struck true to me was Eddie doesn't have an old school mindset. So with that, I think I've had so much freedom to 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 jump, like to just literally jump and implement and be the best version of myself, because we haven't had that, again, mentality where it's, well, you'll do that and I'll do this. It's like really falling into where our skill set is instead of our roles are. And I do think that women have a tendency to better in certain areas and men have a tendency to be better in certain areas. And that's amazing. But again, with that, it's allowed me to create structures based on what's best for women while still being in a career and having leadership. And, again, I won't say he allowed me the space because that doesn't sound right, but he's so supportive of me doing that and recognizing. But then also with what you said, I said, I want to be with my kids. I do. Like I said, when we went to the race, he was like, "Whew, like break." And I'm like, "Where are they?" you know, and that's our strength too,
It's
right?
true.
It's our strength. So when we look at corporate structures, I posted something on my Instagram a couple weeks back that I said this is probably triggering, but the corporate world isn't made for women. I didn't say we can't thrive or we can't be, we're an incredibly intelligent or amazing. We are,
It's just
but
not made for us.
no, it's
Yeah.
not made for us. You want a woman who is an amazing leadership in her home and with her children because she thrives in that. And if you give her the space in that, oh my gosh, it's like the capacity to give and serve and create. Like we have so many amazing qualities that are stifled in trying to be everything to everybody instead of being allowing us the fluidity. I think if you allow women the fluidity to work in their zone in the way, like just like mountains move.
Yeah. Mm. Oh, good stuff. Well,
Yeah.
I feel like that's a really lovely place to land on and to wrap this up. Please tell us more about how people can reach out to work with you and who would be, a perfect candidate to do so.
Yes. So to reach me, we have a website, which I'm hoping will get tagged here, but if not, Health
Well, absolutely.
Academy. Yes, healthacademyinc.com. Instagram is a great platform at Allie Seller, and we can connect there. Again, I'm pretty easily accessible, and I would love to connect with you. There's gain different opportunities, and sometimes it's just a conversation. And the more people we get to meet and conversate with, I mean, it's beneficial to all of us. So I would love to have a conversation. The Are we fit to work together? I mean, really, it comes down to coaches, consultants, and expert service providers. You've got in a business, you're in a business, you've got an expertise, but you're really trapped in that time for money cycle. And there's something greater, but just don't know how. Like, I would absolutely be honored to have a conversation with you.
Oh, absolutely. And yes, all of the contact information are in the show notes for this podcast. So please make sure that you
Amazing.
go to the podcast episode and hit see more and see the description and all the contact information so you can reach out to Allison and have that conversation. Just take that step and then see where.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And I look forward to connecting to your audience. This is such an amazing podcast, such amazing conversations that happen. So thank you for allowing me to be in the space with you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I couldn't do any of this without amazing guests such as yourself. So I am always so honored for all of the information and knowledge and wisdom that gets shared in this space. So thank you so much for being here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I will talk to you very soon.
Absolutely. And to the listeners, thank you so much for being here. Again, you're an important part of this as well. It takes all of us being here to co-create this to learn. So thank you so much. If you liked this podcast, please make sure to share it with your audience, rate this podcast, leave a review. All of that really helps and it would mean the world to me. And if there is someone that you know about that you would love to have on this podcast, please let me know. If there's something you're curious about, share that as well, because hey, we all love to learn and grow together. So thanks so much for being here. Until next time, everyone, take care.